Your mother called for me, in her final words. The lawyer handed me a white envelope at my mother's funeral. I stood beside the casket in a black dress that felt too tight, my hands shaking as I took the envelope. Around me, mourners whispered condolences and shared memories of a woman I thought I'd known my whole life. The envelope was sealed with wax, old-fashioned and deliberate. My mother's signature was pressed into the red wax, clear and unmistakable. I'm Margaret, Maggie to most people, and I thought I understood my family history. 65 years of believing in a simple narrative. My mother had raised me alone after my father died when I was 2. She'd worked as a nurse for 40 years, never remarried, devoted her life to her only child. Then, when I was 25, I'd adopted a baby girl named Claire after years of infertility. My mother had helped me raise her. 3 generations of women, bound by love, if not always by understanding. Now my mother was dead, and this lawyer, a man I'd never met named Thomas Brennan, was handing me secrets sealed in wax. "What is this?" I asked. My voice came out hoarse from crying. "Instructions from your mother," he said. "She retained my services 6 months ago. She was very specific about when and how this should be delivered to you." 6 months ago? That was before the cancer diagnosis, before the rapid decline, before the hospice care. 6 months ago. My mother had been planning her death and its aftermath while pretending everything was fine. She knew she was ill, Thomas Brennan said gently. She wanted to put her affairs in order. I looked at the envelope in my hands. It felt heavier than paper should feel. "Did she tell you what's inside?" "No," he said, "but she made me promise to ensure you received it immediately after the funeral service. She said it was urgent. She said you needed to know before." He stopped, glanced toward the casket, then at someone behind me, "Before you spoke with anyone else." I turned to see who he was looking at. My daughter-in-law, Elena, stood near the back of the funeral home, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear, maybe, or guilt. Elena had married my son David 3 years ago, and I'd grown to love her like my own daughter. But now she looked at me the way deer look at headlights, frozen, terrified, trapped. "What's going on?" I asked Thomas Brennan. "I don't know," he said. "Your mother didn't confide in me. She just paid my retainer and gave me very specific instructions. I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen. I wish I could tell you more." Mrs. Chen, my married name though my husband had been dead for 15 years. I'd never gone back to my maiden name, Whitfield, because by then I'd been Mrs. Chen for so long that changing it felt like erasing part of myself. I broke the wax seal on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded in thirds. The handwriting wasn't my mother's careful cursive. It was someone else's writing, blocky and masculine, but at the bottom was my mother's signature, shaky but unmistakable. I read the letter once, quickly, not believing what I was seeing. Then I read it again, slowly, each word landing like a physical blow. "Margaret, the girl you adopted, Claire, is actually my biological daughter. DNA results are being held in a safety deposit box at First National Bank, box number 4782. There was a mistake at the hospital 40 years ago. 2 babies were switched at birth. The daughter you raised as Claire is my blood. The daughter I raised as mine was someone else's child entirely. I'm sorry I waited so long to tell you. I was afraid of what it would do to our family. But you deserve to know the truth. The key to the safety deposit box is in the blue vase on my mantle. Go there before you speak to anyone. Especially before you speak to Elena. She knows more than she's told you. I'm sorry. I love you, Mother." I read it a third time, my hands trembling so badly the paper rustled like leaves in wind. Claire was my mother's biological daughter. The baby I'd adopted 40 years ago, the child I'd raised, the woman who'd grown up calling me Mom, she was actually my sister, and my mother had known this whole time. No, that couldn't be right. I read it again. 2 babies were switched. Claire was my mother's daughter. But my mother had raised me, so if Claire was her biological child, and I was the child she raised, then the realization hit me like cold water. I wasn't my mother's biological daughter. I was the other baby, the switched baby, the stranger's child she'd accidentally raised for 65 years. My legs went weak. Thomas Brennan caught my arm. "Are you all right?" "I need to sit down," I said. He guided me to a chair in the corner of the funeral home. The mourners had started to leave, filing out in small groups, their voices fading into the parking lot. Elena was still standing near the back, watching me. When our eyes met, she looked away quickly. "Mrs. Chen," Thomas Brennan said, "is there anything I can do?" "How long have you known my mother?" I asked. 6 months, he said. As I mentioned, she retained me specifically for this matter. Did she seem? I searched for the right word. Did she seem confused? Was she having memory problems? Could this be a mistake? She was completely lucid when I met with her, he said carefully. She provided documentation, medical records, hospital logs from 40 years ago, correspondence with the hospital's risk management department. She'd been investigating this for several years. Apparently, she was very thorough. Several years. My mother had known this secret for years, and never told me. She'd watched me raise Claire, watched me celebrate Mother's Days and birthdays and graduations, watched me navigate the complicated relationship between mother and daughter, knowing the whole time that Claire was actually her biological child, that I was raising my own sister without knowing it. "The safety deposit box," I said. "Do you know what's in it?" "DNA test results, I believe," Thomas Brennan said, "and possibly other documentation. Your mother was very insistent that you review the contents before making any decisions." "Decisions about what?" He hesitated. "I think that's something you'll understand once you've seen the evidence." I stood up, still clutching the letter. My head felt strange, disconnected from my body. "I need to go to my mother's house. Would you like me to accompany you?" he asked. "No," I said. "I need to do this alone." I walked toward the exit. Elena intercepted me, halfway across the room. "Maggie," she said, "I'm so sorry about your mother. She was an amazing woman." "Thank you," I said, automatically. "Is everything okay?" Elena asked. Her eyes dropped to the letter in my hand. "What did the lawyer give you?" "Just some paperwork about the estate." I lied. The words came easily, surprisingly easily. Maybe I'd learned more from my mother than I'd realized. "Oh," Elena said. She seemed relieved. I was worried it might be something. "Never mind. Do you need anything? Can I help with the reception?" "No, thank you," I said. "I need to take care of something at my mother's house first. I'll meet you at the reception later." "Okay," she said. But she didn't move. "Maggie, there's something I should probably tell you about your mother and Claire." There was— "Not now," I said, more sharply than I intended. "I'm sorry, Elena. I just need some time alone." I left before she could say anything else. The autumn air was cold and clean, cutting through the fog in my head. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel. My mother's house was 15 minutes away, the blue vase on the mantel. The key to the safety deposit box, DNA results that would prove or disprove everything in that letter. I should call Claire. I should call my son David. I should call someone and tell them what I'd just learned. But I didn't. I drove to my mother's house in silence, the letter sitting on the passenger seat like a ticking bomb. The house looked exactly as it always had, a small craftsman-style home with a neat lawn and flower beds my mother had tended obsessively. I'd been here 3 days ago, sitting beside her hospice bed, holding her hand while she slipped in and out of consciousness. She'd opened her eyes near the end and looked at me with sudden clarity. "Maggie," she'd whispered, "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner." "Told me what, Mom?" I'd asked. But she'd closed her eyes again, drifting back into that space between life and death. Those were her last words to me. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner." Now I understood what she'd meant. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the familiar quiet of the house. It smelled like her, lavender and old books and the faint medicinal scent of illness. The hospice bed was still in the living room, sheets stripped, waiting to be picked up. I walked past it to the mantel. The blue vase was exactly where it had always been, tucked between family photos and my mother's nursing school graduation picture. I lifted it carefully. It was heavier than I expected. Something rattled inside. I turned it upside down. A small brass key fell into my palm, along with a folded piece of paper. I unfolded the paper. It was a note in my mother's handwriting. Box 4782, First National Bank. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I thought I was protecting everyone, but I was only protecting myself. The truth is in the box. Whatever you decide to do with it, I'll understand. I love you. Always have. Always will. I sat down on the couch, still holding the key. The family photos on the mantel stared back at me. My mother and me at my high school graduation. My mother and me at my wedding. My mother holding baby Claire in the hospital, both of them smiling at the camera. My mother and Claire at Claire's college graduation, arms around each other, looking so much alike that strangers had always commented on it. Looking so much alike because they were mother and daughter, because Claire was my mother's biological child, not mine, because I had spent 40 years raising my own sister without knowing it. The phone rang. I ignored it. It rang again. On the third ring, I checked the caller ID. Claire, my daughter, my sister. I didn't answer. Instead, I got back in my car and drove to First National Bank. It was Saturday, but the bank had weekend hours for safety deposit box access. I signed in with the attendant, showed my ID, presented the key. The attendant checked the records. Box 4782 is registered to Gloria Whitfield, she said. You're listed as the authorized co-accessor. Just need your signature here. I signed. She led me to the vault, a small windowless room lined with metal boxes. She used her master key and my key together to open box 4782. Then she left me alone. The box was larger than I'd expected, big enough to hold several manila folders and a shoebox. I pulled everything out and set it on the small table in the vault. My hands were shaking again. The first folder contained hospital records from 40 years ago. Mercy General Hospital, maternity ward, 2 babies born on the same night, February 14th. 1 to Gloria Whitfield, single mother, nurse. 1 to Patricia Reynolds, married mother, elementary school teacher. Both babies were girls. Both weighed approximately 7 pounds. Both had dark hair. Both were healthy, and at some point during that chaotic night, they'd been switched. The record showed that Gloria Whitfield had been admitted at 11:45 p.m., delivered at 2:18 a.m. Patricia Reynolds had been admitted at midnight, delivered at 2:47 a.m. The babies had been taken to the nursery together, and somewhere in those early morning hours, their identification bracelets had been swapped. The error had been discovered 18 months later when Patricia Reynolds brought her daughter to the hospital for a routine blood test. The blood type didn't match either parent. Patricia had demanded an investigation. The hospital had conducted DNA testing on both families. The results were in the second folder, official DNA analysis from a certified laboratory, dated 1985. Claire Whitfield, the baby being raised by Gloria Whitfield, was genetically the daughter of Patricia and Robert Reynolds. Margaret Whitfield, the 18-month-old being raised by Patricia Reynolds, was genetically the daughter of Gloria Whitfield. The babies had been switched. By the time anyone realized, both children had bonded with their families. Both families had been given a choice: swap the children back, or continue raising the daughters they'd come to love as their own. The third folder contained legal documents. Both families had signed agreements acknowledging the error and agreeing to keep the situation confidential. Both families had agreed to continue raising the children they'd bonded with the understanding that the truth might be revealed when the children were adults. Patricia Reynolds had insisted on one additional clause. She wanted regular updates on her biological daughter's welfare. Gloria had agreed, apparently, to send annual letters and photos to Patricia through an intermediary attorney. The fourth folder contained those letters. 40 years of updates, written in my mother's careful handwriting, describing my childhood, my education, my marriage, my adoption of Claire, my life, letters that had been sent to a stranger, to my biological mother, every year on my birthday. I read through them with tears streaming down my face. My mother had documented everything: my first steps, my first words, my struggles in school, my teenage rebellions, my college graduation, my wedding, my years of infertility, my decision to adopt. The final letter was dated 6 months ago. Dear Patricia, Margaret is 65 now, the same age I was when I finally decided to tell her the truth. I've been a coward for too long. She deserves to know where she came from. She deserves to know about you. I'm dying, and I don't want to take this secret to my grave. I'm giving her all of this documentation. What she does with it is her choice. Thank you for trusting me with her life. I hope I did right by her. I hope you can forgive me for keeping her from you. Gloria. I sat in that vault for an hour, reading and rereading the documents. The DNA evidence was irrefutable. Claire was my biological half-sister, sharing a mother with me, but she was also my adopted daughter. And I was Gloria Whitfield's adopted daughter in everything but legal paperwork, raised by her, loved by her, shaped by her, but not genetically related to her. The woman who'd given birth to me was named Patricia Reynolds. According to the letters, she'd moved to Oregon in 1990 after her husband died. She'd never remarried. She'd never had other children. She'd spent 40 years wondering about the daughter who'd been switched at birth, receiving yearly letters but never meeting me. The shoebox at the bottom of the safety deposit box contained photographs, photos of a woman who looked nothing like me. Pale skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, Patricia Reynolds, in various stages of life, sent to my mother as some kind of reciprocal exchange for the letters about me. Photos of a stranger who was genetically my mother, and tucked into the bottom of the shoebox. A more recent photo, Patricia Reynolds, with my daughter-in-law Elena. They were standing together at what looked like a coffee shop, both smiling at the camera. On the back, written in my mother's handwriting, Portland, Oregon, March 2023, Elena knows. Elena knows. I felt cold. Elena had known about this. She'd known that Claire was my sister, that I wasn't Gloria's biological daughter, that Patricia Reynolds was alive and living in Oregon, and she'd never told me. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena, "We need to talk before the reception. It's important. Meet me at your mother's house." I stared at the message. Then I packed everything back into the folders, closed the safety deposit box, and left the bank. I drove to my mother's house with my mind racing through implications and questions and horrible possibilities. Elena's car was already in the driveway when I arrived. She was sitting on the front porch steps, her posture tense, her hands clasped between her knees. She looked like she'd been there for a while, working up the courage for whatever conversation was about to happen. When she saw me pull in, she stood up quickly, almost jumping to her feet. Her nervousness was palpable, even from a distance. "Maggie," she said. As I approached, her voice was tight with anxiety. "I'm so glad you came. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you about this for months. I've started this conversation in my head 100 times, and it never goes well." "You knew," I said, cutting through her rambling. I held up the folders from the safety deposit box like evidence in a trial. "You knew about the baby switch. You knew about Patricia Reynolds. You knew my mother wasn't my biological mother. You knew Claire wasn't my biological daughter. How long, Elena? How long have you been sitting on this information while I walked around completely oblivious to the truth about my own life?" Her face went pale, all color draining from her cheeks. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "How did you find out? Did Gloria tell you before she died? I thought she was going to wait until after." "After what?" I demanded. "After the funeral? After everyone had gone home? After I'd spent more months or years believing a lie? My mother left me everything," I said, shaking the folders for emphasis. "All of it. The hospital records from 40 years ago showing the mix-up. The DNA tests proving that Claire is my sister, not my daughter. The letters she sent to Patricia Reynolds for 6 decades, documenting my entire life for a stranger. And yes, Elena, a photo of you with Patricia Reynolds, dated just 6 months ago. Both of you smiling at the camera like old friends. So don't you dare stand there and pretend you were protecting anyone but yourself." "That's not fair," Elena said, her own anger finally surfacing. "I didn't ask to be put in this position. Patricia found me, Maggie. She tracked me down through social media after David and I got engaged. She reached out with all of this information, all of this history, and asked me to be the go-between. She wanted to meet you, but was terrified you'd reject her. She wanted to know if your family would be receptive to contact. She put me in an impossible situation." "And you decided to keep secrets from me," I said. "You decided that you knew better than I did what information I could handle about my own life." "No," Elena said forcefully. "I decided to respect your mother's wishes. When Patricia contacted me, I immediately went to Gloria. I showed her all the documentation, told her everything Patricia had said. I gave Gloria the choice. Should I facilitate contact between you and Patricia, or should I stay out of it? Gloria begged me to wait. She said she would tell you herself when the time was right. She said you'd been through so much loss already. Your father, when you were young, years of infertility struggles, your husband's death. She said adding this revelation on top of everything else would break you. She asked me to trust her judgment and give her time to find the right moment. But she ran out of time, I said. My anger was fading, replaced by exhaustion and grief. She ran out of time. Elena agreed quietly. And I'm sorry, Maggie. I'm so sorry. I should have told you myself when it became clear Gloria was dying. I should have insisted that she tell you immediately, instead of waiting for some perfect moment that was never going to come. But I was trying to honor her wishes, trying to respect the woman who'd raised you and loved you for 65 years. I thought I was doing the right thing. Well, you weren't, I said, but the words lacked heat. I was too tired for real anger. You made a choice that wasn't yours to make. You kept information from me that I had every right to know. And now I have to figure out how to process the fact that everyone around me knew the truth about my life, except me. Not everyone, Elena said. David doesn't know. Your friends don't know. The only people who knew were Gloria, Patricia, Claire, and me. Claire knows? The words came out as a whisper. Elena's expression shifted to something like pity. That's what I need to talk to you about, Maggie. There's more to this story than what was in Gloria's safety deposit box. I unlocked the door. We went into my mother's living room, still dominated by that empty hospice bed. Elena sat on the couch. I sat across from her in my mother's chair, the folders on my lap like armor. Talk, I said. Elena took a deep breath. I met Patricia Reynolds 2 years ago. She found me through social media. She'd been following your family online, trying to stay connected without actually making contact. When she saw that David and I were engaged, she reached out to me. She told me everything about the baby switch. She had all the documentation. She wanted to meet you, but she was afraid. Afraid you'd hate her. Afraid you'd blame her for giving you up. She didn't give me up, I said. I was switched at birth. That's not the same thing. I know, Elena said. But that's how she felt, like she'd failed you somehow by not fighting harder to get you back when the switch was discovered. She's carried that guilt for 40 years, Maggie. It's destroyed her. And you decided to keep this secret from me. Why? I asked. Because your mother asked me to, Elena said quietly. Patricia reached out to Gloria too. She wanted permission to contact you. Gloria said no. She said you'd already dealt with enough loss in your life. Your father, your infertility struggles, your husband's death. She said telling you about the switch would only hurt you more. She said she'd tell you herself when the time was right. When the time was right, I repeated. She was dying, Elena. She ran out of time. I know, Elena said. That's why I'm telling you now, because Gloria isn't here to do it herself, and you deserve to know. But there's more, Maggie. There's something else your mother didn't tell you. Something about Claire. What about her? My heart was pounding. Elena pulled out her own phone, opened a photo, and handed it to me. It showed a DNA test result, dated last month. Claire Chen, daughter of Margaret Chen. Biological relationship, half-sibling. Claire found out, Elena said. She did one of those ancestry DNA tests for fun. It matched her with your mother's profile. Your mother had taken the test years ago, probably to confirm what she already knew. When Claire saw the result, showing Gloria as her biological mother instead of you, she freaked out. She came to me because we're close, and I had to tell her everything, about the switch, about Patricia, about the fact that you're actually her biological half-sister, not her mother. When was this? I asked. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from someone else. A month ago, Elena said. Right before your mother went into hospice, Claire confronted Gloria. They had a huge fight. Claire accused Gloria of lying for 40 years, of stealing her from her real family, of ruining everyone's lives. Gloria tried to explain, but Claire wouldn't listen. She said she needed time to process everything. She said she couldn't face you until she'd figured out how to tell you. Where is Claire now? I asked. Oregon, Elena said quietly. She went to meet Patricia. She's been there for 3 weeks. The room tilted. Claire had known for a month. She'd known that I wasn't her biological mother, that Gloria was, that everything we'd believed about our family was a lie. And instead of telling me, instead of asking me for help or support or understanding, she'd run to Oregon to meet the stranger who'd given birth to me. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked. The tears came now, hot and angry. Why did everyone decide I was too fragile to handle the truth? It wasn't about fragility, Elena said. She moved to sit beside me, but I pulled away. Gloria was trying to protect you. She thought if you never knew about the switch, you'd never have to deal with the pain of it. She thought she was doing the right thing. Well, she was wrong, I said. I spent 65 years not knowing where I came from. I spent 40 years raising a child who was actually my sister. Do you understand how that feels? Every memory I have is now different. Every moment with my mother was built on a lie. Every time Claire called me mom, it was technically incorrect. My entire life was fiction. That's not true, Elena said firmly. Your life was real, Maggie. Your relationship with Gloria was real. Your relationship with Claire is real. DNA doesn't change love. It doesn't change the 40 years you spent being her mother in every way that matters. But it changes everything else, I said. It changes who I am, where I come from, what my medical history is, whether I have siblings I never knew about. It changes my entire understanding of my place in the world. I know, Elena said. And I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have insisted that Gloria tell you. But I was trying to respect her wishes, and I thought she'd have more time. I thought she'd tell you herself before. Before she died, I finished, leaving me to find out from a lawyer and a safety deposit box. We sat in silence for a while. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. My mother's house, full of her absence, felt like a museum of lies. What do I do now? I asked finally. That's up to you, Elena said. But if you want my advice, I think you should call Patricia. She's been waiting 40 years to talk to you, and I think you should talk to Claire. She's confused and angry and scared. She needs her mother, her real mother, the one who raised her, regardless of genetics. I don't even know where to start, I said. Start with the truth, Elena said. Start by accepting that your mother loved you, even if she made mistakes. Start by accepting that Claire loved you, even if she's having trouble processing all of this. Start by accepting that Patricia didn't abandon you. She lost you through no fault of her own. And start by accepting that you get to decide what family means, not some hospital error from 40 years ago. I looked at the folders in my lap. 40 years of documentation. 40 years of secrets. 40 years of a truth that had been carefully hidden and finally revealed. Will you come with me to Oregon? I asked Elena. She looked surprised. To meet Patricia. And to bring Claire home, I said. If she'll come, if she still considers me her mother after everything she's learned. Of course she does, Elena said. Maggie, you raised her. You were there for every scraped knee, every bad grade, every heartbreak, every triumph. You're her mother in every way that matters. The DNA test doesn't change that. It changes it for her, though, I said. Otherwise, she wouldn't have run to Oregon. She ran because she was overwhelmed, Elena said. She ran because she needed time to process, but she didn't run away from you. She ran toward answers. That's different. Maybe, or maybe Claire had been looking for an excuse to reject me, to replace me with the genetic mother who'd always been out there waiting. Maybe the DNA test had given her permission to dissolve our relationship and start over with someone who shared her blood. I called David, my son, and told him I needed to make a trip to Oregon for a few days. I didn't tell him why. I said it was related to settling my mother's estate. He offered to come with me, but I said no. I needed to do this with Elena, just the two of us. We flew to Portland the next morning. I'd sent Patricia Reynolds an email the night before. This is Margaret Chen. I received my mother's documents. I know about the switch. I'm coming to Portland tomorrow. I'd like to meet you if you're willing. She'd responded within minutes. I've been waiting 65 years for this. Please come. I'll be at my house all day. Address attached. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for giving me this chance. Patricia lived in a small cottage in southeast Portland, surrounded by gardens that were starting their autumn fade. She answered the door before we knocked, like she'd been watching from the window. She was 72 now, older than in the photos, but still recognizably the woman from the shoebox images. Blonde hair gone gray, blue eyes faded but bright, hands that shook when she reached for me. Margaret, she said. Her voice broke on my name. Oh my God, you're really here. I didn't know what to say. This woman was a stranger who'd given birth to me. This woman was my genetic mother who'd never gotten to be my mother in any other way. This woman had received letters about my life for 40 years, but had never held me, never comforted me, never been there for any of the moments that mattered. "Hi," I said. It felt inadequate, but it was all I had. She pulled me into a hug. I stood there stiffly, not sure how to respond. Elena watched from a few feet away, giving us space. "I'm sorry," Patricia said, pulling back. "I know this is overwhelming. Please come in. Claire is here. She's been waiting for you." Claire, my daughter, my sister, the girl I'd adopted as a baby, raised through diapers and tantrums and teenage rebellion, watched graduate from college and get married and build her own life. She appeared in the doorway behind Patricia, looking uncertain and somehow younger despite being 40 years old. She'd cut her hair short since I'd last seen her, a dramatic pixie cut that I'd never seen her wear before. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater in a color I didn't recognize. She looked like she'd been crying for days, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. She looked like a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "Mom," she said. The word came out tentative, questioning, like she wasn't sure she had the right to use it anymore. Then she stopped herself, shook her head, pressed her lips together. I don't know what to call you now. Is Mom still okay? Or should I call you Maggie? Or Margaret? What's the right way to address someone who raised you as your mother, but turns out to be your biological half-sister? There's no guidebook for this situation." "Mom is fine," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, despite the tears threatening to spill over. "You've called me Mom for 40 years. Why would that change now?" "Because it's a lie," she said. The words burst out of her, sharp and painful. "Don't you see, Mom? Maggie, whoever you are to me now, everything I thought I knew about my identity was wrong. You're not my mother, you're my sister. Or half-sister, technically, since we only share Gloria as a biological parent." And she gestured wildly at Patricia, who stood silent and uncomfortable between us. "She's not some random stranger. She's my biological grandmother. The woman who gave birth to you. The woman who should have been in my life from the beginning, if the hospital hadn't screwed everything up. And Gloria, the woman I thought was my grandmother, the woman I grieved for at her funeral, she was actually my biological mother. Do you understand how completely messed up this is? Do you understand that every relationship I thought I had was technically false? I called the wrong person Mom my entire life. I grieved for the wrong grandmother last week. I built my entire sense of self on relationships that turned out to be based on a hospital error." "The relationships weren't false," I said, moving into the room, trying to bridge the physical and emotional distance between us. "Claire, listen to me. I know this is overwhelming. I know it feels like everything has changed, but the love we shared was real. The 40 years we spent as mother and daughter were real. The memories we built together don't disappear because of a DNA test. I raised you. I was there when you were sick with chickenpox at age 7. I was there when you broke your arm falling off your bike at age 10. I was there for your first heartbreak, your high school graduation, your college move-in day, your wedding. I'm the one who taught you to read, helped you with algebra homework even though I'm terrible at math, held you when your first serious relationship ended. That doesn't evaporate, because we found out we share Gloria as a biological parent, instead of you being my adopted daughter." "But it changes everything," she insisted, her voice rising with emotion. "Don't you see? The fundamental structure of our relationship was built on incorrect information. You adopted me because you couldn't have biological children. You chose me out of hundreds of available babies. You raised me as your daughter. But the whole time, I was actually Gloria's biological daughter, your half-sister, and nobody bothered to tell us. How am I supposed to process that? How am I supposed to look at you and still see my mother when I now know that genetically, biologically, scientifically, you're not?" "Because DNA doesn't determine motherhood," Patricia said quietly. Both Claire and I turned to look at her. Surprised by her interjection, she'd been standing so still, so silent, that I'd almost forgotten she was there. Now she stepped forward, her expression gentle but firm. "I gave birth to Margaret. That makes me her biological mother, but I'm not her real mother. Gloria was her real mother. Gloria raised her, loved her, shaped her into the woman standing in front of me right now. I was just the vessel that brought Margaret into the world. Gloria was the one who made her into a person. But you're my biological grandmother, Claire said to Patricia. Doesn't that relationship matter? Don't you want to know me? Of course, I want to know you, Patricia said, her voice breaking with emotion. I've wanted that since the day I found out about the switch. Since the day I learned that the baby girl being raised by my husband's ex-wife was actually my biological granddaughter. I've wanted to meet you, to be part of your life, to watch you grow up, but I don't want to replace Margaret in your life. I don't want you to stop calling her Mom just because you've discovered we're related by blood. The relationship you have with Margaret is precious and real and built on 4 decades of love. Don't throw that away because of a technicality. It's not a technicality, Claire said. It's my entire identity. It's who I am, where I come from, what my medical history is, whether I have other relatives I don't know about. It changes everything about how I see myself in the world. I know, I said. I'm living through the same revelation. But Claire, listen to me. The DNA doesn't change what we've been to each other. I raised you. I was there when you were sick, when you graduated, when you got married. I'm the one who taught you to read and helped you with your homework and held you when you cried. That doesn't disappear because of a hospital mistake 40 years ago. But it changes everything, she said. Don't you see? I called the wrong person Mom my whole life. I grieved for the wrong grandmother. I built my identity on relationships that were technically false. They weren't false, Patricia said quietly. Both Claire and I turned to look at her. They were real relationships based on real love. Yes, there was a mistake at the hospital. Yes, the biological connections got mixed up. But Margaret raised you with love and devotion. Gloria raised Margaret with the same love and devotion. Those relationships were real. Claire, they mattered. They still matter. But you're my biological grandmother, Claire said to Patricia. Don't you want a relationship with me? Of course I do, Patricia said. I've wanted that since the day I found out about the switch. But I don't want to replace Margaret in your life. I want to add to your family, not destroy what already exists. We stood there in Patricia's living room, 3 generations of women connected by biology and circumstance and a 40-year-old secret. None of us knew exactly what we were to each other anymore. None of us knew how to move forward. Can we sit down? I asked. Can we just talk about this like adults instead of running away or hiding behind secrets? We sat. Patricia made tea. Elena excused herself to give us privacy. And then, finally, we talked. Patricia told us about discovering the switch when Claire was 18 months old, about the shock of learning that the baby she'd brought home from the hospital wasn't biologically hers, about the gut-wrenching decision to keep raising me anyway, because by then I was bonded to her and her husband, because I knew them as my parents, because switching me back to Gloria would have been traumatic for everyone involved. But you didn't keep me, I said. I don't remember you at all. Patricia's face crumpled. We tried. We really tried, but my husband Robert couldn't handle it. He looked at you every day and saw another man's child. He couldn't bond with you the way he'd bonded before we knew. He started drinking. He started staying late at work. He started suggesting we give you back to Gloria, tell her the truth, correct the mistake while you were still young enough to adjust. So you did, I said flatly. No, Patricia said. I refused. You were my daughter in every way that mattered, biological or not. But Robert filed for divorce when you were 2. He said he couldn't live with the lie anymore. He said every time he looked at you, he felt like he was raising someone else's child. Because you were, Claire said. Because I was, Patricia agreed. And legally, Gloria had every right to contest the arrangement. When she found out about the divorce, she asked for you back. She said she wanted her biological daughter. She said it would be easier for everyone if we just corrected the mistake, now instead of waiting until you were older. So we went to court. And the court gave me to Gloria, I said. The court gave you to your biological mother, Patricia said, because Robert didn't want you, and I was going to be a single mother anyway, and Gloria had a stable job and a strong family support system. The judge decided it would be less disruptive to make the switch when you were 2 instead of waiting until you were older. He said you were young enough that you'd adjust and forget me. And I did forget, I said. I don't have any memories of you. I know. Patricia whispered. I hoped you would. I hoped it would be easier for you that way. But it's haunted me for 63 years, Margaret. 63 years of wondering if I made the right choice. 63 years of getting letters from Gloria, seeing photos of you growing up, knowing I'd given you away and could never get you back. Why didn't you fight harder? I asked. Why didn't you contest the ruling? Because Robert was right, she said. You weren't biologically mine. I had no legal standing, and Gloria wanted you. She loved you. She could give you things I couldn't. So I let you go. I let Gloria raise you. And I spent the rest of my life wondering if you were happy, if you were healthy, if you ever thought about the mother you didn't remember. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to rage at her for giving me up, for not fighting harder, for choosing to let me go, but part of me understood. She'd been a single mother, facing impossible choices. She'd done what she thought was best for everyone. Why did you reach out now? I asked. After all these years, why contact Elena? Why not just let the secret stay buried? Because Gloria was dying, Patricia said. She called me 6 months ago and told me about the cancer. She said she was finally going to tell you the truth. She said you deserved to know where you came from. She asked if I'd be willing to meet you if you wanted to meet me. I said yes. I said I'd been waiting my whole life for the chance. But then Claire found out first. Elena added from the doorway. She'd apparently been listening the whole time, and everything got complicated. I looked at Claire. Why didn't you come to me when you got the DNA results? Why did you run to Patricia instead? Claire's eyes filled with tears, because I was scared, because I didn't know how to tell you that I'd spent my whole life calling the wrong person Mom. Because I thought, if I met Patricia first, if I understood the whole story, maybe I could figure out how to explain it to you. But then Gloria died, and everything got even more complicated, and I panicked. I didn't know what to do. You could have trusted me, I said. You could have told me the truth and let me help you process it. I know, she said. But I was afraid you'd be hurt. Afraid you'd think I was rejecting you. Afraid you'd feel like I was choosing Patricia over you. Are you? I asked. Choosing her over me? No, Claire said firmly. God, no. Mom, you raised me. You're my mother in every way that matters. But Patricia is also my grandmother, and I wanted to know her. I wanted to understand where I came from. That doesn't mean I love you any less. But it changes our relationship, I said. You can't pretend it doesn't. You know now that I'm technically your half-sister, not your mother. That has to change how you see me. It doesn't change anything, Claire insisted. You adopted me when you couldn't have biological children. You raised me for 40 years. The DNA test doesn't erase any of that. It just adds context. It explains why I look so much like Gloria. It explains why you and I never quite looked alike. But it doesn't change the fact that you're my mom. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that DNA didn't matter, that love was enough, that 40 years of motherhood couldn't be undone by a blood test. But I also felt the shift, the knowledge that Claire was my half-sister, that Gloria was her biological mother, that Patricia was my biological mother. It all created a distance that hadn't been there before, a space where uncertainty and confusion lived. What do we do now? I asked. How do we move forward from this? Together, Patricia said. All of us, we're family, Margaret. Maybe not in the traditional sense, but we're connected. Claire is your daughter and my granddaughter. You're my biological daughter and Gloria's adopted daughter. We can honor all of those relationships without ranking them or choosing between them. It's not that simple, I said. No, Patricia agreed. It's not, but it's possible, if we're willing to work at it, if we're willing to be honest with each other and patient with the process. We talked for hours, we talked through dinner and into the evening. Patricia showed me photos of my biological father, a man named Richard Whitfield, who died before Gloria, and Patricia discovered the switch. We talked about medical history. Patricia's family had a history of heart disease, which explained my own cardiac issues. We talked about siblings. I had 2 half-brothers through Richard who didn't know I existed, which opened up a whole new set of questions. Claire and I talked about what it meant to be sisters who'd spent 40 years as mother and daughter. We talked about whether she could call me Mom, or if that felt too weird now. We talked about whether I was angry at her for running to Patricia. We talked about whether our relationship could survive this revelation. I don't want to lose you, Claire said, as the evening wound down. You're the most important person in my life. You've always been there for me. This doesn't change that. It changes everything, I said, but I hugged her anyway, holding her close the way I'd done when she was a child. She was still my daughter, biology or not. She was still the little girl I'd brought home from the adoption agency, the baby I'd loved from the moment I saw her, that couldn't be erased by a DNA test. Before we left Portland, Patricia gave me a box of letters. These are the letters Gloria sent me over the years, she said, updates about your life. I thought you might want to read them, to see how much she loved you. I took the box. It was heavy with 40 years of correspondence, 40 years of my life, documented by the woman who raised me, sent to the woman who gave birth to me. Elena and I flew home the next day. Claire stayed in Portland for a few more days, getting to know Patricia. I tried not to feel jealous. I tried to remember that Patricia deserved this time with her granddaughter, that she'd lost 65 years with me and was entitled to build a relationship with Claire. But it still hurt. Back home, I sat in my mother's house, Gloria's house, and read through the letters Patricia had given me. They were beautiful and heartbreaking. Gloria had poured her love for me into every page, describing my childhood with detail and affection that made me cry. One letter, dated when I was 16. Margaret is struggling in school, but not because she isn't smart. She's brilliant, actually, too brilliant for her own good sometimes. She questions everything, challenges every assumption. Her teachers find her exhausting, but I find her inspiring. She reminds me of Richard in that way, always searching for truth, always refusing to accept easy answers. I hope she never loses that quality, even though I know it will make her life harder. Another letter, dated when I was 30. Margaret finally adopted a baby girl today. She's over the moon. She named her Claire, after no one in particular, she just liked the name. But I see the irony. Claire, meaning clear or bright. A fresh start. A new beginning. Margaret has no idea that Claire is actually my biological daughter, that this adoption has brought my baby back to me in the strangest way possible. I should tell her. I know I should, but I'm afraid of what it will do to her. Afraid of how it will change everything. So I stay silent and hold my granddaughter/daughter and pray I'm making the right choice. The letters revealed that Gloria had struggled with the secret her whole life. She'd wanted to tell me countless times. She'd come close during my wedding, during my divorce, during the years when I was struggling with infertility, but each time she'd convinced herself that the truth would do more harm than good. The final letter was dated 6 months before her death. I'm dying, Patricia. The cancer is aggressive. I have maybe a year left. I need to tell Margaret the truth before I go. She deserves to know where she came from. She deserves to know about you. I'm going to leave her all the documentation. I'm going to let her decide what to do with it. I hope she can forgive me for waiting so long. I hope she can understand that I was trying to protect her, even if I was wrong. Tell her I loved her. If you ever get the chance, tell her she was the best thing that ever happened to me, biological daughter or not. I sat in Gloria's house, surrounded by her things, reading her words, and I finally understood. She'd been terrified of losing me. Terrified that if I knew the truth, I'd reject her, seek out Patricia, try to reclaim the biological relationship we'd lost. She'd held on to the secret, not out of malice, but out of love. Misguided, perhaps. Selfish, maybe, but love, nonetheless. I called David and told him everything. He was shocked, confused, angry. He wanted to know why no one had told him. He wanted to know how this affected his relationship with Claire. Was she still his sister, or was she technically his aunt? He wanted to know if we could sue the hospital for the original error. None of that matters, I told him. What matters is that we're still family. What matters is that we love each other. The DNA is just details. He didn't sound convinced, but he promised to think about it. He promised to call Claire and make sure she was okay. Over the next few months, we slowly rebuilt our family structure around the new information. Claire came home from Portland and moved back into her own apartment. She called me once a week. Uncertain at first, then with growing confidence, we had lunch every Sunday. We talked about her relationship with Patricia, her feelings about Gloria, her confusion about what to call me now. Just call me Mom, I said every time. That's who I am to you. That's who I'll always be. Patricia came to visit for Thanksgiving. It was awkward at first. This stranger who was my biological mother, sitting at my table, eating my food, trying to make conversation with grandchildren who didn't know her. But by the end of the night, it felt almost normal. We even laughed together, sharing stories about Claire's childhood that highlighted how little biology mattered compared to lived experience. David struggled the most with the revelation. He couldn't quite wrap his head around the idea that his sister was technically his aunt. He kept asking legal questions, genetic questions, questions about inheritance and family trees, and what to tell his own children. But eventually, he settled into acceptance. Claire was still Claire. I was still his mother. The rest was just complicated details. A year after Gloria's death, I went back to Mercy General Hospital where the switch had occurred. I requested a meeting with the current administration. I brought all of Gloria's documentation. I explained what had happened 40 years ago, how 2 babies had been switched, how my entire family had been living with the consequences ever since. They were apologetic, but unsurprised. Apparently, the hospital had been dealing with the fallout from various errors for decades. They offered a settlement, money to compensate for the emotional distress, the therapy costs, the lifetime of confusion. I turned it down. Money couldn't fix what had been broken. Money couldn't give me back the mother I'd lost, or the mother I'd never known. Instead, I asked for a different kind of compensation, a memorial plaque in the maternity ward, dedicated to Gloria Whitfield and Patricia Reynolds, honoring their strength in navigating an impossible situation. The hospital agreed. The plaque was installed on the 2nd anniversary of Gloria's death. It reads, "In memory of Gloria Whitfield and Patricia Reynolds, mothers who loved beyond biology and taught us that family is built through choice as much as chance." Patricia came to the unveiling. Claire came. David came. Elena came. We stood together in the maternity ward, looking at this small acknowledgement of our complicated history, and for the first time since reading that letter at Gloria's funeral, I felt at peace. "Thank you," Patricia said to me, "for including me in this, for not blaming me. I blamed you for a while," I admitted. "I blamed everyone, you for giving me up, Gloria for keeping secrets, the hospital for making the mistake in the first place. But blame doesn't change anything. It just makes the pain last longer." "You're wiser than I was at your age," she said. "I had a good teacher," I said. "Gloria raised me well. Even if she wasn't my biological mother, she was my mother in every way that mattered." Patricia nodded. "She loved you so much, Margaret. Those letters she sent me, you could feel it in every word. She treasured you." "I know," I said. "And I treasured her. I still do." Claire joined us, linking her arms through both of ours. "2 grandmothers," she said. "Lucky me." "1 grandmother," Patricia corrected gently. "And 1 mother. Don't confuse the relationships, Claire. Margaret is your mother. I'm just the genetic grandmother who gets to be a bonus family member." "You're both important to me," Claire said. "I don't have to choose." "No," I agreed. "You don't." We stood there together, 3 generations of women whose relationships defied simple categorization. We were connected by love and law and a hospital error from 4 decades ago. We were mother and daughter and sisters and grandmother and granddaughter, all at once, and none of those things completely. But we were family, that much was certain, and in the end, that was all that mattered. 3 years after Gloria's death, I received an email from one of my biological half-brothers. He'd done an ancestry DNA test and had been matched with Claire. He'd done some research and figured out the connection. His father Richard had a daughter who'd been switched at birth, raised by Gloria, now living under the name Margaret Chen. His name was Robert Whitfield Jr., named after Patricia's ex-husband who'd raised him before the divorce. He was 58, lived in California, worked as an architect. He had 2 adult children and 4 grandchildren. He wanted to know if I was interested in connecting with my biological family. I sat with that email for a week before responding. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep my biological family at a distance, to maintain the boundaries I'd worked so hard to establish. But part of me was curious. These were my brothers, genetically if not emotionally. They shared my medical history, my ancestry, my DNA. I wrote back, "Yes, I'd like to connect, but slowly. This has been a complicated process, and I want to make sure I'm honoring all my relationships, the biological ones and the chosen ones." We started emailing, then talking on the phone, then video chatting. Robert Jr. was warm and funny and patient with my questions. He told me about Richard, our shared father, who died of a heart attack when Robert Jr. was only 12. He told me about their younger brother Michael, who lived in Texas and worked as a veterinarian. He told me about the extended Whitfield family, a sprawling network of cousins and aunts and uncles I'd never known existed. "Do you want to meet in person?" Robert Jr. asked after several months of correspondence. "Yes," I said. "I think I do." We arranged a family reunion in California. Robert Jr. hosted at his house, a beautiful craftsman in the Berkeley Hills. Michael flew in from Texas with his wife and kids. Patricia came, nervous about seeing the family she'd left behind decades ago. Claire came, curious about these biological relatives. David came, supportive but skeptical. Elena came, documenting everything with her camera. It was strange, and wonderful, and overwhelming. I met brothers I'd never known, nieces and nephews, who were technically my cousins, grandchildren, who were part of a family tree I'd just discovered. We looked at photos of Richard, trying to see which features I'd inherited. We talked about medical history, personality traits, shared interests that might be genetic or might just be coincidence. "You have his eyes," Michael said, studying my face, "and his stubborn streak. I bet Dad never backed down from an argument." "Neither do I admitted. "Then you're definitely a Whitfield," Robert Jr. said with a grin. It felt good to belong to this biological family, to understand where my genetics came from, to see myself reflected in faces that shared my DNA, but it also felt incomplete, because the family that had shaped me, Gloria, David, Claire, they weren't here. They were my real family, the people who'd raised me, and loved me, and made me who I was. "Are you okay?" Claire asked me later that evening. We were standing on the deck, watching the sunset over the bay. "I think so," I said. "It's just a lot. Finding out at 68 that I have an entirely different biological family that I never knew existed." "Do you wish you'd known sooner?" she asked. I thought about that. Maybe, but I also think Gloria was right to wait. If I'd known as a child that I was switched at birth, it would have defined my entire childhood. I would have spent my life wondering about Patricia and Richard and the brothers I didn't know. I might not have bonded with Gloria the way I did. So maybe it's better that I got to be her daughter completely, without reservation, for 65 years before learning the truth. "Do you still think of her as your mother?" Claire asked. "Always," I said. "She raised me, she loved me, she made me who I am. The DNA doesn't change that." "Good," Claire said. "Because I still think of you as my mother, even though I know technically you're my half-sister." "Technically doesn't matter," I said. "Love matters, choice matters. Biology is just details." We stood there together, watching the sunset, two women whose relationship had survived secrets and revelations and complicated truths, mother and daughter, sisters, family. 5 years after Gloria's death, Patricia was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's. She called me personally to tell me, her voice shaking on the phone. "I'm going to forget you," she said. "I'm going to forget everything, and I never even got to really know you." "Then, let's make up for lost time," I said. "I'll come to Portland. We'll spend as much time together as possible. We'll make memories while we still can." I spent 2 months in Portland that summer, staying in Patricia's guest room, helping her set up systems to manage her declining memory. We went through old photos together. We recorded videos of her telling stories about Richard, about my biological family, about the day she discovered the switch. We created memory books that she could reference as her disease progressed. "I'm sorry I gave you up," she said. One night, we were sitting on her porch, watching fireflies. "I should have fought harder to keep you. You made the best choice you could with the information you had," I said, "and you gave me to someone who loved me deeply. That's not something to apologize for." "But I missed your whole life," she said. "I missed your first steps, your first words, your graduation, your wedding, everything. I got letters and photos, but that's not the same as being there." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But we're here now. We have this time. That counts for something." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Margaret. I know I don't have the right to say that, but it's true. I've loved you from the moment you were born, even when you weren't mine anymore. You have every right to say it, I said. And I love you too. Not the way I loved Gloria. That was different, deeper, built over a lifetime. But I love you for giving birth to me, for letting me go to someone who could care for me better, for waiting 65 years to meet me. That takes a special kind of love. Patricia's decline was faster than any of us expected, faster than the doctors had predicted, faster than seemed fair after finally getting to know her. Within a year of the diagnosis, she didn't recognize me anymore when I visited. She would look at me with those faded blue eyes, now clouded with confusion, and smile politely the way you smile at a stranger. "Who are you, dear?" she'd ask. And I'd have to introduce myself again. "I'm Margaret, your daughter." And she'd look confused, sometimes upset, saying, "But I don't have a daughter. My baby was taken away when she was 2 years old." Within 2 years, she was in a memory care facility, unable to live alone, unable to care for herself, unable to hold on to the present for more than a few moments at a time. The disease was eating away at her brain, consuming the memories we'd worked so hard to create together, the videos we'd recorded, the photo albums we'd compiled, the stories she'd told me about Richard and my biological family. None of it registered anymore. She lived in a permanent state of confusion, sometimes thinking she was 20 years old and expecting Richard to pick her up for a date, sometimes thinking she was 40 and wondering where her baby had gone, sometimes not knowing what year it was or why she was in this strange place with these strange people. I visited her every week, flying to Portland or driving down depending on my work schedule. Claire came with me sometimes, sitting quietly while I held Patricia's hand and told her stories about our lives. I described my week, my work, my home, my family, even though I knew she wouldn't remember any of it 5 minutes later. I'd show her photos on my phone, pictures of Claire and David and my grandchildren, and watch as she studied the faces with vague interest, unable to connect the images to any concrete memory. "They're beautiful children," she'd say, looking at a photo of her own great-grandchildren. "Are they yours?" "They're your great-grandchildren." I'd explain patiently. "This is Claire, your granddaughter, and these are her children, your great-grandchildren. We're your family, Patricia." She'd nod, trying to process the information, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. The disease had stolen her ability to hold on to new information. Every conversation was the first conversation. Every visit was a new visit. She was trapped in a loop of forgetting, unable to build on our relationship, unable to remember the love we'd slowly constructed over those precious few years before Alzheimer's took over. Within 3 years, she was bedridden, nonverbal, fading in and out of consciousness. The facility called me when the end was near. I flew to Portland immediately, bringing Claire with me. We sat beside her bed, in that sterile room, with its beeping machines and antiseptic smell, holding her hands, waiting. "Do you think she knows we're here?" Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I hope so," I said. "I hope on some level, even if she can't verbally acknowledge us, she knows she's not alone." Patricia opened her eyes occasionally, looking around the room with unfocused confusion. Once, her gaze landed on me, and something flickered. Recognition? Memory? Hope? Before clouding over again. But in that brief moment, I chose to believe she knew me. I chose to believe that somewhere deep in her damaged brain, she recognized the daughter she'd given birth to 68 years ago, the daughter she'd let go at age 2, the daughter she'd finally found again in her 70s. "Are you my daughter?" she asked, suddenly, her voice weak and scratchy from disuse. Her eyes were fixed on my face with an intensity that suggested a moment of clarity cutting through the fog. "Yes," I said firmly, squeezing her hand. "I'm Margaret, your daughter. I'm right here with you." "I thought I lost you," she whispered, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. "I thought you were gone forever. They told me the babies were switched. They told me the daughter I'd been raising wasn't mine. They told me I had to give her back. I didn't want to. I wanted to keep you, but Robert said we couldn't. He said it wasn't fair to keep another woman's child, so I let you go. I let them take you away from me, and I've regretted it every day since." "I know," I said, my own tears falling freely now. "I know you've carried that guilt, but you did what you thought was right. You gave me to Gloria, and she loved me. She raised me well. You don't have to feel guilty anymore, Patricia. You gave me a good life, even if it wasn't with you." "I'm glad," she said, her words getting slower, more labored. "I'm so glad you had a good life." I'm so glad I got to meet you before. She didn't finish the sentence. Her eyes drifted closed. Before what? Claire asked gently, leaning forward. Before you died? Is that what you mean? Patricia's eyes opened again, finding Claire's face this time. Who are you? She asked. I'm Claire, Claire said, her voice thick with emotion. Your granddaughter, Margaret's daughter. We're both here with you. You're not alone. Patricia smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face briefly. Claire, she repeated, tasting the name. That's a beautiful name. It means clear or bright, doesn't it? Yes, Claire said, surprised that Patricia had access to that information even as so much else had been lost. It means clear, like clear water or a clear day. A clear view of the truth, Patricia said. Her voice was fading now, growing softer with each word. That's what we all needed. A clear view of the truth, instead of all these secrets and switched babies and lies. If we'd just been honest from the beginning, maybe everything would have been different. Or maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to, I said, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. Maybe all of this, the switch, the secrets, the revelations, even your illness, maybe it was all leading us to this moment. 3 generations of women who love each other even though the relationships are complicated. Maybe that's worth something. It's worth everything, Patricia whispered. Then she closed her eyes and took one last rattling breath, and she was gone. I sat beside her bed at the end, holding her hand the way I'd held Gloria's hand 3 years earlier. 2 mothers, 2 deathbeds, 2 chances to say goodbye to women who'd shaped my life in profoundly different ways. She looked peaceful in death. The lines of confusion and frustration smoothed from her face. She looked younger somehow, like the woman in those old photos from the safety deposit box, the young mother who'd held her baby girl for 2 years before being forced to give her away. The funeral was small but meaningful. Robert Jr. and Michael came with their families. Some of Patricia's friends from the memory care facility came. Claire gave a eulogy that had everyone in tears. I only knew her for 8 years, she said, her voice strong despite the emotion. 8 years isn't much time when you're trying to make up for a lifetime of missed connections. But in those 8 years, Patricia taught me something invaluable, that love transcends biology, that family is about choice, as much as genetics, that the circumstances of our birth don't have to define us. What defines us is how we choose to love each other despite those circumstances. She paused, looking out at the gathered mourners. Patricia gave birth to my mother and raised her for 2 years before the hospital error was discovered, and she was forced to make an impossible choice. She let my mother go because she thought it was the right thing to do, because the court ordered it, because her husband couldn't accept raising another man's child, because single motherhood in 1960 was harder than it is now. She spent the next 66 years wondering if she'd made the right choice, wondering if my mother resented her, wondering if she'd ever get the chance to explain. Claire's voice broke, but she continued. She got that chance. In her final years before the Alzheimer's took over, she got to know the daughter she'd given birth to. She got to meet her granddaughter, me. She got to be part of our family, even if it was only for a short time. And I truly hope, that in those final moments of clarity before she died, she understood that we didn't blame her, that we were grateful for the choices she made, even if they were painful, that we loved her, not just as a biological connection, but as the woman who brought my mother into this world and then had the strength to let her go when she thought it was best. The mourners nodded. I sat in the front row, crying for the woman who'd given birth to me, who'd let me go, who'd waited a lifetime to know me, and who'd finally gotten 3 years of memories before the disease took even those away. After the funeral, Robert Jr. and Michael came up to me. She talked about you at the end. Robert Jr. said, when she could still remember, she said finding you again was the best thing that ever happened to her. She said it made all the years of waiting worth it. Thank you for telling me that, I said. We're glad we got to know you too, Michael added. Even if the circumstances were strange, you're our sister, Margaret. Your family. Family. That word again, with all its complicated meanings: biological family, chosen family, legal family, found family. We were all of those things, and none of them completely, but we were connected, bound by a hospital error, and 50 years of secrets, and the courage to finally tell the truth. I'm 70 now. Now, Claire is 45. David is 43. My biological brothers are in their 60s. Patricia is gone. Gloria is gone. The generation that created this complicated family structure has passed away, leaving us to navigate the aftermath. But we're okay. We're more than okay. We're a family that defies simple categorization, that spans biology and choice and circumstance. We're proof that love transcends genetics, that motherhood is about raising children, not birthing them, that family is something you build together through years of showing up and choosing each other. Claire still calls me mom. I still think of her as my daughter. David still thinks of Claire as his sister. The Whitfield brothers still think of me as their sister. Patricia's memory lives on in the stories we tell and the lives we've built. And Gloria, my mother, my real mother, the woman who raised me and loved me and kept secrets to protect me, she lives on too, in my values, my choices, my understanding that sometimes love means making hard decisions and living with the consequences. The wedding that day 10 years ago changed my son's life. But this funeral, these two funerals, 5 years apart, changed mine. They taught me that family isn't about DNA or biology or legal documents. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you, even when the truth is complicated. I still have the letters Gloria wrote to Patricia. I still have the memory books Patricia and I created together. I still have the relationships we built in the aftermath of revelation. And I have the knowledge that I was loved by two mothers, one who raised me and one who let me go, and that both of those loves shaped me into the person I am. That's not tragedy, that's grace. And I'm grateful for all of it, the mistakes, the secrets, the revelations, the complications, because without them, I wouldn't have this family, this beautiful, complicated, chosen, biological, legal, found family that transcends simple definitions and proves that love is bigger than genetics, stronger than circumstance, and more powerful than any hospital error could ever be.